Ez milyen hosszú? 3 perc. Szia súlyka. Ez mi a tököm?
Games that spawned out of the famed Warcraft 3 Defense of the Ancients mod, led by ex-Dota developer IceFrog and superfan Mark DeForest with the help of his game development company S2 Games. Heroes of Newerth would launch in 2010, and despite reaching over 3 million players, Han would teeter out to a deafening silence, though only officially shutting down servers just last December 2021. What went wrong with arguably the most enigmatic and hardcore of the MOBAs, Heroes of Newerth, and how did it go from being a success story to a tragic one of what could have been? On this episode of Death of a Game, we diagnose the largest contributing factors to the death of a game, Heroes of Newerth. Stay tuned near the end of the episode to witness the final deduction where we take all of the clues and evidence gathered and deduce the case. And at the very end of the episode, there's a clue on what the next episode will be about. Pick your lane, detectives. There's a case to solve.
Lehetett volna ez a... lehetett volna ez a LOL helyett. Ja, Fodor biztos meghallgat, Erza. Megmutassam a Discord beszélgetésünket, amikor nem válaszoltál az üzenetemre 2 napja.
Hello everybody, I'd like to welcome our sponsor for this video. It's Geology. Geology is a 9-time award-winning and biggest creators of the known as Dota, Defense of the MOBA, or multiplayer. The story for sponsoring today's video, and back to the mystery detectives. The story of Heroes of Newerth, like with every MOBA, or multiplayer online battle arena as it's dubbed, stems from the creation of a mod in Warcraft 3, Defense of the Ancients, or simply known as Dota in 2003. Various creators of the mod would go on to have long and storied game development careers, forming many splinter-off projects from the guts of Dota. S2 Games and CEO Mark DeForest, a massive Dota fan, team up with Dota creator IceFrog and about 40 to 60 developers to work on a new game in the Newerth universe.
Nem is az, hogy megtiltotta a Blizzard, hanem azt csinálták, hogy ha valaki csinál az ő játékukból bármit, akkor kb. Az így a Blizzardé lesz, vagy legalábbis, ja. És belegondolva konkrétan, egy csomó dolgot, ami így kurva jó lett, azt konkrétan így az eredeti játék ott módolva csináltak meg. Itt például a Dotát is. És akkor még bazd meg lehetett Blizzard.
S2 Games' universe previously utilized in their title Savage.
Blizzard.
Development, according to developer Alan Kashiamani, would last for a total of 34 months, 13 being spent on the engine alone. S2 Games' previous title, Savage the Battle for Newerth, and subsequent sequel, Savage 2 A Tortured Soul, were unique titles that blended first-person shooter elements with real-time strategy elements. Savage in general as a franchise was successful and beloved by fans, but nothing that blew the doors off in terms of success quite yet. Having their hands in the Dota craze early on could prove to position themselves as a big player in the video game development space though going forward, especially with their talented development ability. S2 Games announced Heroes of Newerth September 2nd, 2009. Han was teased as a desire to create a standalone Dota, the vision of Mark DeForest. Dota that would incorporate features that DeForest felt were lacking, such as in-game voice, game archives and replay systems, a map editor with modding capabilities, and much more, all the while remaining true to what it means to be a Dota game. Han wouldn't be the only Dota competitor trying to capitalize on the immense success of Warcraft 3. Also rising from the mods community was another competitor, Riot Games and their game, League of Legends. Even early on, LOL and Han were pitted against each other. Riot's League of Legends seemed to appeal to a more casual audience, while Han was attempting to be as pure as Dota as possible. With some upgrades fitting for a true game and not just a mod. This video is about Han, but inevitably LOL and another particular title will make appearances throughout, as you can probably understand. As the Dota competition started to heat up, Han and LOL were the first to strike true. Han would follow LOL, who was playable in 2009, and have an open beta playable April 1st, 2010. Riot would be boasting Dota devs Pendragon and Ginsu. S2, like Riot, was intent on getting an adaptation as soon as possible, to beat other people to the market, but sometimes being first isn't always the best thing. Meanwhile, quietly, Valve and Blizzard would be tackling legal issues in an attempt to trademark the very name Dota itself. We also know, most interestingly, a
Igen.
perfect clue
Már ott is
really
geceskedett
that
a Blizzard
Icebox
azzal, hogy
quietly,
Dota
Valve
legyen,
and
basz meg
Blizzard
a
would be
játék
tackling
neve, amit
legal issues in
csináltak
an
a
attempt to
Valve-isok.
trademark the very name Dota
Fú,
itself.
geci.
We also know, most interestingly, a perfect clue really, that IceFrog, the aforementioned Dota dev, would quietly leave S2 Games sometime before the launch, citing lack of creative control. Valve would pick IceFrog right up and give him and his team the budget and clout needed to easily rival any MOBA on the market. Whether or not S2 Games made a mistake letting IceFrog go, or Valve just simply poached him, was a mystery at the time, especially a mystery concerning what would happen next. But not to the many people watching in horror, or maybe just a slight bit of tongue-in-cheek laughter at the moment. Or at the very least a little smirk, right? Knowing what inevitable future was coming. Heroes of Newerth launched worldwide May 12th, 2010. The catch was, the game wasn't launching free-to-play. Yep,
Yeah,
you heard that right. Instead, Heroes of Newerth would cost $30, making it the only MOBA at the time, and in the future kind of, to cost money and not be free. Han came with way more heroes than the competition would, and they were all rather unique and offered completely different playstyle.
De amúgy, tehát az is vicces amúgy, hogy tényleg így több karakter volt, teljesen unik karakterek voltak, volt, teljesen egyedi volt így a nagyon nagy része. A LoL is fizetős volt.
That some were inspired by Dota from, while others took archetypes to the next level. If you're wondering why I would cover something like Han personally, besides it being a great
Szerintem
story
sem.
and relevant for the series,
Hát pont azért lolozott. Pont azért, de igazából a Hont azt többen játszották az elején.
naturally, is the hero battler aspects are quite impressive and arguably best in slot. When you watch the hero spotlights in Han, while they don't have the same personality or story background as LOL, you keep wondering when the ability explanations are going to stop. The game's heroes are incredibly in-depth and varied overall, boasting very high skill caps and a great variety of gameplay combinations. At the core, Han was very much a Dota game, where two games of players competed against each other, each team spawning on their respective side, with the goal with the use of the aid of minions to destroy the enemy's towers and base. Heroes provided different benefits and fulfill different roles that make up a proper team composition, roles such as carry, support, ganker, or jungler. Over time, players would gain gold and experience to become more powerful over time through purchasing items and leveling up. PC Gamer would rate Han as 71 out of 100, stating that ultimately they couldn't recommend the game. Although it had a lot to offer in the way of complexity and difficulty, PC Gamer would cite the negative and unapproachable community and lack of in-game reward systems for reasons not to recommend the game. Heroes of Newerth with other critics would score an aggregate review website score of 76 out of 100 on Metacritic, which wasn't outright impressive but guaranteed there was something to work with at the very least for S2 Games. Heroes of Newerth's first major update would hit soon after launch, December 7th, 2010, dubbed Han 2.0.
Jó, mondjuk azt hozzáteszem, szerintem akkoriban azért ezek a kritikák, ezek valószínűleg ezek komolyabban voltak véve, mint most, mert nézek, tehát legalábbis én, akkor meg lehet nem is néztem, de ha most megnézek egy kritikát, így, hogy ennyi minden játszottam meg, aznak hát akik ezeket a kritikákat csinálják, igen, nem tudom, hogy most milyen, de a nagy része az ilyen kritikusoknak, inkább nem. Én azt mondom, hogy inkább nem. Főleg egy sokkal összetettebb, nem azt mondom, hogy hardcore, de egy hardcore-abb multiplayer játékot nem is tudom pontozni, vagy tetizélni.
2.0 would add a brand new casual gameplay mode, a revamped matchmaking system, a new map and map editor, and a better streamlined.
Volt valami meme is a izéről, a Po és mondjuk az IGN-es volt. Megkeresem. Ez volt? Nem biztos, hogy ez volt. Hol van ilyen Arda kivágja, hogy hol van, amire gondolok. Nem, én a Poira gondoltam. Volt egy ilyen IGN-es. Szerintem ez az. Mindegy, beletekertem, ez a rész itt bőven elég. Igen. Which in my interest across the more than 75 hours it took me to complete its 10-act campaign. All that really matters is having gear with enough elemental resistance. Közben beleolvasgattam, de tehát, hogy kiemelni dolgokat, tehát, hogy el kell olvasni az egészet, Szlete. El kell olvasni az egészet. Itt nem az, hogy agyatlanba vitte el végig. Tehát, jó, mindegy. Tehát most itt lehet nektek kötözködni, igen, hogy elolvasott mindent, de nem olvasott el mindent. Nem olvasott el mindent, teljesen olyan dolgok tehát, hogy olyan dolgok vannak itt leírva, aminek nincs köze a lore-hoz, hanem olyan dolgok vannak itt leírva, amiből az jön le, hogy az emberünknek nem ezt kéne, nem ezzel kéne valószínűleg foglalkoznia. Nem gyökér, csak valószínűleg nem ő a legjobb ember arra, hogy teszteljen, vagy nem tudom, egy kritikát írjon ilyen játékokról. Na mindegy, ezzel csak azt akartam mondani, ezzel most csak eszembe jutott, hogy a kritikusoknak nem biztos, hogy mindig arra kell hallgatni, hogy a kritikus mit mond, vagy mit mondott a játékról. Hát ezt nem azt mondtam, hogy ne írjon, én csak azt mondom, hogy nem biztos, hogy ilyen témába kéne. Lehet, hogy nem neki a legjobb ez.
Many Han fans who were in beta felt that this was a bait and switch, and perhaps Han was always going to be free to play, but they just...
Csak azért jutott ez eszembe, mert ezt egyébként... Ezt a kritikát, vagy ezt a review-t, ezt konkrétan a Redditen is, meg a PoE játékosok körében szerintem a PoE streamerek is emlékeznek erre, mert ezt utána szétszették, hogy milyen kretén volt ez az egész. Tehát konkrétan ezt erre úgy emlékszem én is, hogy ez szét lett kapva rendesen. Egyébként erre nehéz így válaszolni, hogy jól volt az elején. Az elején például olyan, tehát hogyha mondjuk mondani kéne nagyobb embert, aki például játszotta, az például a krippék nagyon nyomták a poét az elején, amikor még volt, mert ez konkrétan úgy lett csinálva a poe, hogy azt a feelinget akarta visszahozni, mint amilyen a Diablo 2 volt, és egyébként én akkoriban nem játszottam vele, de mindenki azt mondta, hogy tehát hogy már akkor is sikerült ez neki megcsinálnia. Sokan egyébként szerintem utána például azért nem is volt olyan népszerű, mert olyannyira hardcore volt, és aztán sokkal inkább nyitottak a casual közönség felé, meg olyan változtatásokat is csináltak, hogy sokkal könnyebb legyen elkezdeni a játékot, és egyébként ez valószínűleg sikerült is nekik. Az elején külön liga volt a hardcore játékosoknak, meg a softcore játékosoknak, azt ugye teljesen megszüntették. Tehát sokkal nehezebb volt szerintem régebben. Jó, hát én nem azt mondom Szipszi, hogy nem kell megnézni például egy kritikát, vagy egy review-t egy játékról, de azért úgy kell szerintem azt kezelni, hogy az egy véleménye valakinek, aki mondjuk ilyenekkel foglalkozik, de nem biztos, hogy egy olyan... Az a baj, ez olyan, hogy kicsit, hogyha ismered azt, aki mondjuk írta ezt a review-t, vagy tesztelte azt a játékot, és bízol benne, akkor van értelme, de ha csak, mit tudom, ránézel kritikára, akkor elolvasod, és akkor esetleg egy-két dolgot le tudsz vonni következtetésnek, de ja.
Balance things for veterans versus new players, with the new update, the players would be reportedly put in separate queues. Han going free to play was imperative for the title, clearly, who was already losing the race by quite a margin to League of Legends. This was in large part due to the switch of the business model as aforementioned, which saw LOL and Dota gain many Han players who might not have ever returned. But another common reason, as explained previously, was the toxicity rampant in the Han community. If you thought putting a paywall on the game would help curb toxicity...
Egyébként ez valószínűleg LoL-ba is így volt. Nem tudom, hogy volt LoL-ba, de én azt mondom, hogy tehát ez maximum azért nem számított annyit, mert LoL az ingyen.
You were sorely mistaken. Han featured some of the most toxic MOBA fans, and reasons for such were due to the game's design and those behind it. Immediately upon joining into...
Valóban volt ilyen. De azért is volt éc, mert ebben a játékban, hogyha valaki mondjuk feedelt, vagy csak simán annyira szar volt, vagy nem tudom, akkor konkrétan tehát a Dotában is egyébként olyan volt, most nem tudom, hogy milyen. De hogy ugye nyilván, mivel denialni is lehet az XP-t, meg vesztesz is goldot, itt konkrétan duplán szopik a csapatot, hogyha valaki szar, vagy szándékosan feedel, vagy mit tudom én.
The game, you could be ridiculed in voice comms because, well, Han was the first game to feature such. Not only did Han foster this toxic environment with needlessly edgy kill streaks and announcements, ones that were made more appealing in competitors, the game itself was just downright more difficult to play, so it would naturally take players more time to learn and attract a player that likes to play more complicated games. And yet the veteran players could burn the players that are trying to learn the game out before they could learn it, unfortunately. The worst part about the Han community is actually S2 Games and their approach towards community in general and taking care of toxicity. While their competitors created entire teams and strategies around curbing toxicity and still struggle, Han sort of just sat back and embraced things, a very purist approach to Dota design. The S2 Games approach, according to players, was hands-off and almost encouraged players to play the game as it was meant to be played, hardcore or not. But it wasn't a good look that your MOBA was being called the most toxic MOBA, and that's coming from a League of Legends player. Had there been more efforts fostering a community, something Dota and LOL actually did pretty well in their betas?
Akkoriban, amikor ezek a játékok jöttek, akkoriban így kb. A LoL-nak alapból előnye volt azzal, hogy ingyenes volt. Akkor szerintem akkoriban nem nagyon volt olyan játék, meg olyan modell, olyan business modell, vagy olyan, ahol így, ami ingyenes volt, azt játszottál, az csak hogyha volt kedved, akkor fizettél, vagy vettél valamit ingyen. Konkrétan szerintem akkoriban jött be ez, vagy nekem nem is rémlik, hogy volt-e előttem olyan más hasonló. Hogy mi volt? Hát ez 2010-ben volt. Mi volt? Hát igen, tört játékok. Volt az nem is volt akkor. Volt már volt. Mert talán nem tudom. Hát olyan játék, aminek a monetizációja ingyenes volt. Olyan régi. Mindegy, az a lényeg, hogy ezzel azt akartam mondani, hogy akkor jó, lehet, hogy volt, de hogy akkor ez volt az időszak, vagy ez volt itt kezdődött el az, hogy egy-két játéknak, vagy innentől volt az, hogy egy-két játéknál már ezt az ingyenes modellt választották. Csak mondom, hogy tehát akkor nem nagyon volt még olyan játék, ami ingyenes volt. Ezután kezdték el ezt a modellt használni szerintem.
This could have been curbed a little bit more, or at the very least the narrative could have been better controlled. as it stood and throughout the live history of Heroes of Newerth, it always had this toxic cloud around it that kept players like me, for example, away from it. To make matters worse, Dota 2 would enter beta during the summer of 2011 as well. Valve and Blizzard would continue to fight over the trademark, with Valve finally winning and being able to call their game Dota 2, which clearly signaled that competition was heating up, as Blizzard was also pushing their MOBA, Heroes of the Storm, out as well. There was fierce competition bubbling up to the surface just less than a year after the launch of Han. S2 Games' answer to the toxicity problem rampant in MOBAs, and their MOBA specifically, Heroes of Newerth, was to create an entirely new MOBA, targeting a more casual audience. Strife, another S2 Games MOBA we won't cover too much in this video, but perhaps another, would begin development sometime in 2011. While S2 Games was pivoting already, barely even...
Régen amúgy ez még egy ilyen dolog volt, hogy na... Ma már annyi játék van, és a felét ingyen hozzád basszák, hogy játszod. De az nem is lehet már. Nem. Ezért nincsenek jó játékok. Mármint vannak, de hogy túl sok van.
Year and a half into the game's launch, Heroes of Newerth that is, Riot Games was hosting a $3 million eSport tournament May 2012. While things might have started like a competition for the two companies and their MOBAs, things now had become forintos. Riot Games had dominated the competition, and Heroes of Newerth was positioned more so as the true Dota-like MOBA, which was able to share some success, but a much smaller amount. By the beginning of 2013, Han was able to obtain 150,000 concurrent players, which was certainly impressive and something that could be built into something much larger, but it was a fraction. It's said that in Han's heyday, it reached about 3 million players, while League of Legends, for contrast, boasted 27 million players. The numbers are a stark reminder at the different levels of success the two games experienced. Han wouldn't quit the competition completely though. They would strike with the largest important update in their history, January 2013, targeting new players and beginners alike. This update would feature a tutorial video series, a report system, AI bots to practice on, and an overall increased visual clarity and graphics. This update was easily the most impactful update of Han's history, managing to slow the bleed of players to an extent that was plaguing the game. But Han at this point seemed to already become a story of too little too late, despite rather steady progress.
Ez volt a baj, ez már egy késő volt, már egy késő volt.
Yet, and maybe ever, July 2013, when Valve would launch the true sequel to Dota.
Már egy késő volt.
This wasn't just a competitor like League of Legends that was going to do potentially well either. It was being backed by an already big powerful company and led by none other than IceFrog himself. Dota 2 was taking all of the original heroes and recreating them effectively, and positioning itself as a true Dota sequel, something that Heroes of Newerth kind of occupied before previously by default. That means that Han was now directly competing with Dota 2, and the result wasn't going well already, with Dota hitting 108,000 players on Steam almost immediately upon launch. With Han being direct competition, how many of those were Han players? Meanwhile, by the summer of 2013, League of Legends had become the most popular game in the world. Even if Han didn't have its own issues, it was going up against Titans and doing so without a legitimate win condition at this point. Like a platinum player who refuses to surrender when the jungle got their solo lane so fed they just roam and kill the other lanes really easily. Not that I'm being specific or anything. But Han was arguably stuck in a game with no win conditions in sight, but unlike that platinum player who refuses to surrender, they decided to do something else, so many will say that what they did next was kind of a forced move. S2 Games would announce their next MOBA, August 2013, publicly, dubbed Strife. One they were literally dubbing as an answer to the toxicity in the MOBA genre. Either S2 Games had no faith in the future and viability of Han and the win conditions I just discussed, with Dota 2 in the space now, or they felt really strongly about their newfound design with Strife. Whatever the case, it wasn't a good look for Han or its current players, which were continuing to dwindle. Dota 2 and LOL grew to How many resources and developers did Strife use from S2? Developers who also worked on Han. There's a good chance that that number isn't zero, which meant that Strife did negatively affect Han in some ways. S2 Games would suffer serious layoffs September 2014, resulting in the termination of
kicsit olyan volt már, mint hogyha így látták volna, hogy LoL-nak mennyire jól ment. A Dotát nem lehet megfogni, azt akkor majd a Strife így jó lesz.
For the reason why. I don't quite see how that makes sense when now you're developing two games simultaneously, which means one of those games is getting greatly reduced in scope, or workforce, and all signs at this point were pointing to
Miért csináltak
By
volna
March
egy másik
2015,
mobilt,
Dota 2
akik
would
már
reach a
csinálnak egy
million
mobilt,
players
az.
peak on Steam, which can't be understated how impressive that is, especially since they were able to maintain it for a bit too. That's because the Steam audience isn't the only audience playing Dota 2. They have a gargantuan-sized audience in Asia
Amúgy nem
and
tudom, mert
other regions as well.
a Smite-nak azért megvan az az előnye, mint a LoL-nak volt a Honnal szemben, meg most is megvan a Dotával szemben, hogy gyorsabb, casualabb kicsit.
Whether through skins, whether through targeted market
A
campaigns,
Smite ugye
having
meg
proper business
az is
partners,
teljesen
as well as
más.
just marketing a lot
Ott
in
megvan
general.
az, hogy mit tudom én,
We're talking
a nagyon
massive
faszák
billboards and type
nekem még
of
mindig nagyon
E3,
tetszenek.
massive
Egyedi.
$1 million
Mindig nagyon
esports
tetszenek az, hogy milyen faszák
massive marketing
az
events,
istenek.
and much more. Not only was the
Megcsinálva,
marketing lacking for Heroes of
és
New World
azok
by
képességei.
comparison, due to such,
Az,
and
hogy
an
most az
overall
ilyen
lack of global presence, the game was being
más
primarily
kamerálásból
played
van, az is
in the Western
egyedibé
world.
teszi emiatt
And this was
így.
problematic for
Jól
two
áll.
reasons, because the majority of MOBA players are actually in the Eastern world, and the best MOBA players are also in the Eastern world. So for a more hardcore
Ja, de ezért mondom, hogy a LoL-nak ez teljesen jó
I point to
volt.
StarCraft
Így.
as an example of that. Dota and LOL were able to double dip into both of these audiences. Meanwhile, Heroes of Newerth struggled to garner a meager Western audience. It's not that Han didn't have an international server or international presence, they did, they just didn't put enough money and effort into becoming more globally known
Igen.
as to have a proper permanence and reach
Meg,
into more
ja,
powerful
casualabb,
markets.
gyorsabb.
It has to be mentioned that Dota and LOL put serious amounts of money and effort into making their games competitive, but also competitive in a community context, which means esport events and tournaments as well. Han might be a more competitive game than Dota and LOL, but it didn't have a more competitive scene, and because of that, Dota and LOL were able to utilize these esport competitions as massive global marketing events. Budget size could be the largest factor contributing to this because LOL was teamed up with an Asian publisher after all, Tencent, fairly early on, who's massively powerful in Asia, and Valve is, well, Valve. S2 Games, impressive developers or not, didn't have the change or the reach globally to rival these publishers, which is likely one of the largest reasons that S2 Games would do what they did next. Heroes of Newerth would be sold to a new developer, Frostburn Studios. Owned and backed by a powerful Asian publisher, Garena, Frostburn would feature many of the same developers, but most crucially would lose the face of Han, with Mark DeForest staying at S2 Games. The customer support manager Brad Bower would be taking over, which I don't know how development or design behind the scenes went, but I do kind of find it odd that they put a customer support manager in charge of things and not just a regular developer. While this could have been a move for
De abban
Han
amúgy
because
teljesen
it allows
értettem,
them to compete against
vagy
these
értek én
other
is.
big competitors,
Vagyis most nem tudom milyen a
why is
Dota
S2 Games
2, de
still
hogy
around and still working on Strife? This guaranteed that the real talent at S2 Games had stayed behind,
de hogy a Hon
choosing to
szerintem
work on
sokkal
Strife
jobb volt
instead of
kompetitív
Han,
mobaként,
which makes
mint
the
a
change in
mostani
shift
Dota
feel
is.
more like getting rid of dead weight.
Csak,
You're
ja,
trying to
csak
cash
hát,
out on a
igen.
game that you don't see going very far anymore.
Már ott sok minden el lett baszva, amire
launched May
elég elment az a dolog.
2015 and would share a similar fate to Heroes of Newerth in terms of popularity, where it has this initial pop, but was unable to ultimately maintain such. A story again and video for another time. By 2018, S2 Games, off of the back of Strife's failure and them offloading Han, would shut down. Han at this point was relegated to getting minuscule updates here and there, where many people felt like after Frostburn Studios took over Han, the momentum just completely stopped and they kind of just walked in place. Dota 2 and LOL and the new arrival of Heroes of Storm by Activision Blizzard would continue to reap the benefits of the successful MOBA market on the other hand. Meanwhile, Han was relegated to those who still had a fondness for its quirks and unique heroes. Han had not just lost the race, they had been left in the dust and nearly forgotten at this point. Heroes of Newerth would continue to hobble along a few more years after, where it finally was announced to shut down December 2021, after 10 years of live. Heroes of Newerth wouldn't be the only MOBA to fall either. Strife would eventually fall as well, and Heroes of the Storm would be put on maintenance mode, signifying its death, hence why I also included it in this series. As well as Paragon and a few other MOBAs that we haven't covered or mentioned yet. The bodies
Hogyha így nézzük, egyébként a Hocs és Hocsot is elbaszták. Tehát
were lining up around the block for League of Legends and Dota 2.
És ott mondjuk a Blizzard volt
For
mögötte.
everybody's favorite part of the video, one thing I wanted to mention that I didn't cover yet, and was a significant contribution to Han's failure as a title, was the game's poor and infrequent balance updates. This was a top complaint of many players who enjoyed the plethora of diverse heroes in Han, but didn't enjoy the hodgepodge balancing, and how long it seemingly took to fix particularly broken aspects. Balancing is a constant issue in multiplayer online games, but MOBAs suffer from them a lot due to heroes being added and dozens upon dozens of heroes existing in the game. In the case of Heroes of Newerth, over 100. With dozens of items and team compositions possible, balancing such would prove to be quite challenging. But that's necessary and understandable. One challenge any developer has to be willing to take on when designing an online multiplayer game with the
A Hodge-sal amúgy alapvetően az volt a baj, amivel nem lett volna baj, csak hát nem is tudom, hogy lehet ezt mondani. Tehát, hogy a Hodge az nem is inkább nem is egy MOBA volt inkább, hanem egy ilyen brawler. Egy ilyen brawler, hát mondjuk mobának hívjuk ezt is, de inkább egy ilyen, tehát ugye az is teljesen más volt, az ilyen brawleres volt, tehát hogy folyamatosan harcolgatsz, meg Szionasi, és Mizu. Ja. És pont ezért volt egyébként nagyon jó, hogyha tudtad játszani csapatként, mert nagyon, tehát nagyon fan volt az a része, ahogy azt a játékot csapatban lehetett játszani, ott folyamatosan lehetett harcolni, hát fan, nem is tudom mit lehet nem mondani, az fan volt bezzeg. Gyors volt, fan volt, élvezetes volt, csak mivel úgy volt megcsinálva a játék, hogy csapatszinten működött a szintlépés, az XP, ezért nagyon fontos volt az, hogy valaki ne bassza a játékot. És hogyha egyedül játszol, akkor viszont nagy esély volt arra, hogy valaki elbassza a játékot. És az, hogy amilyen nekik ez egész ranked rendszerük volt, meg mit tudom én, hogy mivel gyors játékok voltak, ezért konkrétan az volt a ranked rendszerük, hogy 5 perc után, azt hiszem 5 perc várás után szinte bárkit bedobott. De az fan volt. Még azt mondom, még úgy is fan volt, pedig úgy jobbulást. Még úgy is fan volt, de retek szar volt. De mindjárt meg tudom talán egy gyors, egy kis időt rászánok. Mi volt? Biztos nem találom magam úgy. Igen, azt mondom. Nem jut eszembe az amerikai facinak a neve, aki csinált erről videót. Az volt a lényeg, hogy kifigurázta azt, hogy milyen volt a Blizzardnak a ranked keresési rendszere. McIntyre, azt hiszem úgy hívták. Nem? Nem. Várjál. Aztán nincs itt. De biztos, hogy ő volt, nem tudom a videót. Pedig ez jó lett volna. Én jól szoktam menni ebbe, hogy megtalálok így valamit. Ezek azért is megpróbálom megkeresni. Micsoda?
Here you go, Rocky.
Jó, nem találtam meg, viszont más találtam, amivel tudok flexelni. Ja. Jó, egy pillanat még. Most azért is megpróbálom, de akkor fognak találni. Jó, mindegy. Az volt a lényeg, hogy olyan szar volt a rendszer, hogy 5 perc után aztán összerakta az Iron Player-t a top 10-zel konkrétan. És akkor az volt, hogy volt egy top 10-es játékos, meg mondjuk 4 Iron játékos. És akkor mindkét oldalon ez volt. És abban a játékban basszánk, az borzasztó volt, hogy nyilván olyannal játszottál, valószínűleg lóba is az lenne, csak lóba mondjuk, érted, egyedül le tudod carrizni, mert annyi itemed van, meg olyan gyorsan össz, meg mindenkit, de Hodge-ban nem tudtad ezt, hanem ott ugye nyilván a csapat összhang, meg a csapati játék számított, hogy azt mennyire tudtad összehozni, és ahhoz meg ugye irányítani kellett őket. De nyilván ott nem tudtad olyan szinten irányítani az embereket. És akkor az volt a lényeg, hogy ilyen szar volt a rendszer, hogy azt hiszem McIntyre csinált egy olyan videót, hogy volt valami telefonos játék, ahol egy ilyen majommal dobáltál ilyen drágaköveket, és ugye, hogyha elegendő összejött egy drágakőből, akkor mit tudom én, kaptál érte pontot, és azok eltűntek. És akkor mondta, hogy, és akkor próbálta eljátszani, az volt a lényeg, hogy így dobálta a majommal, és akkor na, ez jó helyre ment, az rossz helyre ment, és akkor mutatta, hogy a Blizzard algoritmus úgy működik, hogy össze-vissza kattingatott, és a majom össze-vissza dobálta, és így az egész így földgyűlöm lett, és akkor így... Igen, azt kerestem. Ja. Eznek borzasztó volt.
That Han was capable of. Yep, you heard that right. Sometimes it's a double-edged sword when you design a game that has so much impressive combat and deep complexity to it. It's difficult to balance that, say over a more rudimentary system like a Holy Trinity system featured in most MMOs. Now, balance can sometimes be a red herring, and people can be quick to pull the trigger on that being the reason for a game's failure too much, sometimes. But even if that isn't the case, it means that Han does a poor job of teaching players how to play the game and educating them on how it works. This is something that has been previously mentioned and had plagued Han throughout its development. It took S2 Games effectively years to build proper features to support a casual audience and educate them how to play, which might have been a little bit too late in the end.
Ja.
Something less complex games at the start, like LOL, never really had to struggle with.
Ja.
If you're hearing that snazzy, jazzy detective music, that means we have reached the final deduction portion of this video, where we take all of the gathered clues and evidence thus far and put the case to bed. Why did Heroes of New Worth ultimately die and find its way onto this series? Well, Dota 2. Developers switched to another MOBA project. Sold the game to a new publisher, who then mismanaged it. It lacked the marketing, budget, and global reach of its competitors. It was voted the de facto most toxic MOBA community. Poor and infrequent balance updates.
Csak ennyi hiba volt.
Steep learning curve and poor tutorial systems. Heroes of New Worth's story surprised me. It wasn't the MOBA I was the most familiar with, I must admit. And frankly speaking, in hindsight, I'm kind of sad that I missed a chance to play the game despite playing pretty much all of the other MOBAs. I think it sort of speaks for itself that I never gave the game a shot due to the constant negativity surrounding the game. Negativity that the game was never able to quite shake. And that's a shame too, because without Heroes of New Worth, arguably we wouldn't have had the same MOBA scene. Because Han was the first to bring many innovative features to the MOBA space. Many features MOBAs now feature as commonplace. Han made every other MOBA competitor raise its bar.
Amúgy ezt egyet tudok érteni.
Alone, even if you didn't play the game or enjoy it. It's just a shame more people didn't get the chance to experience the quite fun and impressive array of heroes that was featured in Han. For those who did play Han, tell me about your experiences on it in the comments. Do you disagree with my reasons? What did you enjoy the most about Han personally? Also, stay tuned for more information on our brand new channel.
És még arra is volt hogyha visszafelesültel volt announcer.
Thanks for watching, detectives.
The world was broken.
Igen, csak meg az Hodge-os volt.
The vow keepers said they would protect us from.
Lehet, Redditen kell, ezért kerestem Redditen, mert ott általában, ugye? Mi van még itt? Volt még itt JJ-nek is a videója. Nézem, hogy Csiró küldött, ez valami biztos valami szar. Ez legalább rövid.
Kanok. Józsi. Kálmán. Korompár. Lakatos. Kanalas Márkó.
Sirót intézetek el?
Molnár Kiki.
Sziasztok, Géza vagyok, 45 éves.
Jó, Sirót intézetek el. Sirót intézetek el. Na jó, az még belefér. Na. Ganja.
Yeah, welcome to Hollywood. Yeah, this is Isaac Nabwana welcoming you to Hollywood. Let me tell you something serious here. You know, when I see the whole world, I see people are hungry. They are starving. Look at France. Look at Belgium. Look in Asia there, Korea, USA. Everyone is starving for action.
For action.
Uganda, our commando scientists are fighting to see how much action can fit on a Blu-ray. Yeah, we can add one more action scene.
No,
Yeah.
no, we can't.
No,
We can't do it.
No, the action we have is too much. Man, the Blu-ray cannot manage that action. We should put it more Kung Fu. We can do it.
Országfej oldott. Sokat dolgozhat.
We did it. Yeah, Uganda's first Blu-ray, starring
Swaz! Never be gone! America's best action star, Super Warrior, Wesley Snipes, Bruce Willis, Zoe Bell, Bill Murray.
I'm bad black.
Oh no! Welcome to Uganda.
also starring Who Killed Captain Alex, with and without Vijay. Sitanektiki!
Then who killed Captain Alex? Who?
Wonderful.
Just keep it, it's okay.
Oh.
It's okay.
Oh, look at all the countries that will never give us visa. Commander Jesus. Catch, Papa. No!
Ay.
Oh, it's quiet. It's quiet. No, no, it's just a beginning. We are beginning a tour. Bad Black is coming. It is tour. It's a tour. But where are we? Oh, the beginning is here. Mama, your mother?
Civilizók.
Mama!
Mama?
That's right, super fans. Hollywood is coming to destroy your village.
Csikó, bazzeg. Óri, köszi a rédet, sziasztok.
Welcome to Uganda.
the stuff. Yeah. The hippies. Next, let's put them at center. Yeah.
Source of all evils.
Mafia bagenda kulumba Abamerika. Tulina okufuna ku maanyi. Tulina okufuna force egenda okubakwatako.
Bambi batta Uichi Skywalker. Bambi batta
Uganda tulina obusobozi, tulina amagye agaffe. Leka mbakubire.
Jó. Majd innen folytatjuk a videónézést. Hát az ott megnyitva a háttérbe. Várj, jó, pont. Ez csiró.
Hello, new and returning Dark and Darker players. Yesterday, SDF, the top dev and visionary behind Dark and Darker, did a Q&A on their official Discord channel and provided updates on the next playtest and future development of Dark and Darker. In this video, I will go over the questions asked and what is a yes, no, or maybe for the next playtest, as well as confirmations on future developments.
Úgy sem tudtam megnézegetni, mert szar volt Discordon visszaolvasni.
If you like my videos or get value from my content, please click that subscribe button. Alright, let's hop into the video. First, the big confirmations for the next playtest. SDF confirmed that the first floor, which is called the Ruin, is going to be playable in the next playtest. SDF also confirmed the ruins will be hidden in the forest and hinted at new monsters to encounter during this next playtest. This means we'll get 3 floors instead of the normal 2, and we'll be starting on the top floor and have to work our way down. Per SDF, this is the biggest feature that they're going to be testing this next playtest, so we're looking forward to seeing how they implement it. They actually updated the dungeon layout, so it's instead of B1, B2, B3, it's actually 1F for first floor, and then B1 and B2 for basement 1 and basement 2. Bosses will be on the bottom floor, and the question was asked if the lobby size would be 32 players since we are getting a 3rd floor. And SDF confirmed there will not be 32 players, but did not elaborate on how many players there will be, so we'll just have to wait and see the changes to the lobby size, if any at all. The solo Goblin Cave was confirmed is going to be also in the next playtest, so we're going to have that to look forward to again. Change in the rarity drop rate is going to be updated. It's not going to be the same as previously, and that's the only thing that they've really confirmed on the matter. Also, the addition of more dynamic environment options, adding more traps or more interactive traps that players can use on other players within the dungeon. There are questions about new perks and class updates and different tweaks. So we did get some updates. First, fighters will get new perks and skills. Personally, I'm pretty excited about this as I try to play fighter, but for the skills, you're kind of stuck with sprint and second wind. So new perks and skills are welcome. For Ranger, he talked about adding a quiver and arrow system. The Wizards, he said, won't have major changes other than few balance tweaks, and it looks to be the same for the Barbs. It wasn't confirmed in this Q&A, but I expect the Francisca axis to get a bit of a nerf. The Rogues were probably the most discussed in the Q&A. They definitely want to focus on rebalance of the Rogue, making them a bit more of a diverse playstyle and also more lethal. SDF, hinted on, maybe having a continual pickpocket while invis for the Rogue, just to try to update their class a little bit. SDF did confirm that new weapons will be added into this playtest. A one-headed crossbow is the only one confirmed from the Q&A. So that's what was confirmed in the next playtest. I'll leave a summary on screen. Next, I'll cover what was maybe in the next playtest.
Oh, yeah,
A good amount of answers from the Q&A were likely or unlikely from SDF. So here's a list of things that may or may not be in the next playtest. Maybe a new potion or a new trap. As stated previously, the new dynamic environment options may be added. Maybe a new potion to address magical resistance or magical damage, something along those lines. New items, something maybe that uses the magical interaction speed or some sort of artifact that allow any classes to use maybe tiny spells. Giving all classes the ability to use magic would really diversify the dungeon in terms of how people approach fights. I've talked about the Bard quite a bit in my previous videos, so there was a question about the Bard. It says it's in development, but unsure of whether we're going to see him in the next playtest. Looks like gold pouches are still going to be the same level, so get ready to sell them for candies or whatever are going to be the next little trinket. Looks like quests were unlikely to be in this next playtest as well. There was a question about the loot in the new map, the Ruin. Looks like quests were unlikely to be in this playtest as well.
Jó.
There was a question about the loot in the new map, the
Hogy lett volna azért az is
They
már.
talked about making a fixed downstairs. Not really sure what that means, but something they're looking to test out.
Mi?
Downstairs. Not really sure what that means.
Ja, oké. Mondjuk valószínűleg szarlut lenne amúgy is az első szinten.
He was pretty vague, saying that they're going to focus on a different part, so not sure if that's good or bad news. SDF did say that it's not in the plan to have new bosses added, so looks like they'll probably just be tweaking the old bosses that are there. Some questions that were confirmed no was a duo map or, a duo players map. Any sort of changes in player collision. So say if two players are trying to go through a door and get stuck, they have no plans to update that. The use of the bottom slots in the backpack, no use and no update confirmed on that. There was also a question if the cleric would have ranged weapons, which got a hard no. To be honest, that judgment is ranged enough. There are currently no plans for a PvE mode or something that's purely PvE. So that covers the yeses, maybes, and nos in the playtest. I'll leave a summary on the maybes and the nos on screen. Next, I'm going to cover future developments.
Valaki ilyet kérdezte, hogy Kleriknek lesz a range weaponje.
The big confirmation that got me excited is the new dragon boss, or a dragon. Players were asking questions about potentially, larger maps or larger party sizes, and SDF said that the three-man team doesn't seem to be large enough to defeat the dragon. So, we have confirmation of the dragon, doesn't seem to be larger maps.
Feri, köszönöm szépen a 22-t, köszi. Tehát, hogy 3 ember nem lesz elég megölni a sárkányt.
Party sizes, and SDF said that the three-man team doesn't seem to be large enough to defeat the dragon. So, we have confirmation of a dragon, sort of a Mog-style approach, and yeah, this is going to be exciting to fuck up a dragon. Randomized spawns for monsters have been confirmed for the future. It's already been designed per SDF, but they'll need to complete the basics, and then they'll be able to implement that into the game. As discussed, they're going to be putting more fun features into different classes, such as the rogue. SDF did say that there's a high priority for fighting cheaters. He said fighting cheaters is our destiny and one of our biggest challenges. He did speculate that it isn't possible to 100% defend against cheaters in FPS games, but they're not going to spare any investment in defending against these. Continuous improvement of the trading system was confirmed, so they are looking to update that and make that more fluid and more available for people. As stated previously, the Bard is confirmed for the future, but it's unknown when. SDF did hint at how the Bard playstyle will be. He said that you could be able to play your music with the instruments. Musical instruments are played directly by the player through control, and the result of that will depend on how the player plays the instrument. Moving forward, after the playtest and through development, they're going to always continue to add dungeons into the game, as well as periodic wipes, which kind of goes in line with their season's approach. SDF did confirm that there's not going to be a pay-to-win system, which I'm pretty excited about, because it's bullshit when you can just pay money to advance higher than people who actually grind it out. They're going to have a backpack system that's going to be implemented one day, but not anytime soon. There was the confirmation of trying to create a place where players can practice and check damage amount. Currently, it's in the lobby, but unless you're in a high roller, the game usually starts too fast for you to be able to make it to the bottom basement and actually test out your damage. New weapons will be continuously added to the game, and as previously stated, they've already confirmed that a one-headed crossbow will be in the next playtest. Gold bags and gold chests are currently in development, but they're not going to be released for economic balance reasons. It's very likely that they won't be revealed during this next playtest either. So this covers future developments that have been confirmed from the Q&A that are pretty high priority. I'll leave a summary on screen for you to review. Next, I'm going to go over some low priority items. Steam friends list integration into the game has been, hinted at, but again, it's a low priority. Someone asked about the talents tree, and SDF did confirm that it's a low priority until they developed enough perks and skills and balance for the classes. And again, for balance, they're focused on fun at this point and not necessarily completely balancing it. A map hotkey is planned, but low priority. API for stats for the players to review is planned, but low priority. So this covers questions that were asked that were deemed low priority. I'll leave a summary on screen for you to review. I covered most of the questions, especially ones that were relative to the playtest and the game development, but there were some that I did not cover, so I'll make sure to leave a link to their Discord channel in the video description. Overall, I'm most excited about the top map and the dragon, so really looking forward to seeing those getting developed and released. So this covers the next playtest on the yes, no, and maybe, and some future developments that's confirmed or a low priority, and things that are just not confirmed at all. What are you most looking forward to in the next playtest? And what are some things that you most likely want to see moving forward in the game development? Let me know in the comments.
Nem tudom, mit csinál a videóval, de az mindegy.